That's why I'm here, period. It was just announced yesterday. That's why I'm here.
Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're painful. Well, good morning. Thank you for being here. Ken Delaney said to say hi. Just finished doing my weekly interview with him. And we look forward to this coffee town hall, whatever we call it. And there is coffee back there, so just make sure that if you want some coffee, it's out. Okay? Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. It's always good to see if there's life after politics.
Amen.
Very interesting time going on right now, and we do these town hall meetings so that we can talk about what's taking place. And you don't have to just listen to the media. Whatever you think of media, whatever side of the media, whatever particular media group on the national level that you listen to, you watch, regardless of what they attempt to do at times, there always is a fuller picture, a fuller story. That's what these town hall meetings are for, to give you a chance to ask the questions, and I think we have a good list of questions. We'll have opportunity to, if we finish those, to go to direct questioning and see how that works as well. So, not to delay any further, let's go, Nicole. Thank you for being the moderator. Let's go with questions.
You're welcome. Our first question is from Don Coldwater, and he asks, do you support the funding cut to the Great Lakes Preservation Fund?
No, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, GLRI. I'm on record numerous times right now of, even with the last administration that cut it in half, we bumped it up, working together in a bipartisan way with Great Lakes state legislators. We bumped that back up to where it is now. Our argument is fairly simple. With the President, past and present, with our colleagues in Congress, some of whom have literally never seen the Great Lakes, and some who have come and seen, stood on the shore of Lake Michigan or Lake Erie and looked at it. Initially, their response was, this is a lake. It looks like an ocean. Can't see across. And then we explained to them it's 20% of the world's natural resources of fresh water is here, and we are stewards of that. And there's no reason to let that slip. So no, we will be pushing on that, and I think we'll be successful. As a delegation, you can think of all the states surrounding the Great Lakes. We come together on that, and I believe we'll restore, if not all, of present funding close to that present funding. And remember, any president's budget is a proposition to Congress. He proposes, we dispose. The beauty of what this budget is the first time since Reagan, the first president since Reagan, who has sent to Congress a budget that balances. Kind of like your home budget, you try to balance this. We ought to do the same. Now this thing balances. But what he said to us, if you believe, Tim Walberg, that GLI funding is so important, then you better prove it to me. And oh, by the way, I expect you to show where you can take funding from other areas of less priority. And work out agreements with fellow legislators to move that money toward GLRI. And if we can agree on that, then okay. And that'll be what we do. Also remember, has there ever been a president's budget that has been passed? No. Again, it's his responsibility to send us a budget, but it's our responsibility to put the budget together. And that's what we do.
I'll just add that Della from Coldwater shared the same concern about the Great Lakes funding cuts, but additionally would like to address $9 billion less in education from the budget.
Again, his proposal says if we are going to start to grow an economy that will eradicate a $20 trillion debt, $20 trillion debt, $60,000 per person, regardless of age in this country, that's what we owe as individuals. Only way you can do that, you can't cut enough in our budget. A $4 trillion budget doesn't come up to $20 trillion debt. You can't tax enough to pay off that $20 trillion debt. You have to grow an economy alongside of doing responsible, tough cuts. Yes, tough cuts. But it's tougher now because we didn't do what we should have done for years in keeping ourselves in line, especially the mandatory area of budgets. Discretionary, we kept same funding since 2011. But that's the only thing we're able to control. Now we have a president who says, I'm willing to even make cuts in some of the so-called mandatory areas in order to get us back on track. And it's not going to happen overnight. And so education certainly has to be looked at. Transportation has to be looked at. Commerce budget has to be looked at. State Department has to be looked at. All of them have to be looked at to find areas where we can set priorities and say, yeah, that's nice if we had the money, but it's not absolutely necessary. And in doing those cuts, we're also looking at the regulatory issues where we can save money for the economy. And when we do that, we see revenue increase for the federal government as well.
Next question is from Joe from Quincy, asking, self-employed contractors pay 1.5 times the Social Security quarterly in advance. They need workman's comp and health care. It needs improvement so that small contractors can group together for jobs.
Yeah, that's, again, why the real emphasis in the first 100 days, 120 days of session thus far has been toward restoring opportunities for small businesses by rescinding regulatory policies that were put in place by the last administration, many of which were put in the last 3 months of his time in office. 14 Congressional Review Act resolutions were passed, signed by the President. The last one, the 14th one, was mine. All in the area of regulatory issues that added costs to small businesses. Tax reform policy we want to look at here soon. That was the reason for going for the repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act in order to get that additional almost $1 trillion of tax savings that can be put into our tax reform package that will give relief to businesses. That was the reason why in our American Health Care Act we gave the opportunity for association health plans so small businesses could join together for an economy scale like the big three that have that opportunity because of size and numbers to have better insurance plans that reduce costs. That was the reason we wanted to do that for small businesses as well. You get workers' comp coverage and the fact that a small business person taking out Social Security for themselves, for their employees, is a huge cost. bills that the president has signed so far, that's historic. That's double in the first 100 days of what the Obama administration had signed into law the first 100 days. All of those are moving toward giving these type of benefits so we can grow the economy, we can increase the number of jobs and the security of jobs that are available, and that helps us all.
Okay, Barbara from Quincy asks, what's your view on Russian activities interfering with our elections?
I don't like it. Next question. I'll answer it. No, there's no question. That's one thing, is a bipartisan understanding that Russia has attempted, not only in this election, but other elections, and most recently in France's election, tried to impact. That's why we have investigations going on in the House, the Senate, and now a special counsel, looking at Russia's interference. The Intelligence Committee, on information that they've been able to give out publicly, have said that for a long time. That's why it started before the end of the election, even, looking at what was going on. You have to understand that Russia, led by Putin, still is a communist country. And the only way they have power is by taking that power. And if they can take it out of other countries as well, like the United States, it's great impact on them. So, yeah, I don't like it. We've got to get to the bottom of it. That's why the cybersecurity issues that we're looking at in Energy and Commerce Committee and upping our ability to handle that, and now wondering why that wasn't undertaken by the last administration. It's time to do it.
Okay, Lori from Coldwater asks, what one policy should be changed to help the working poor to be able to afford health care?
Repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act.
With what?
The promises. Let's see which one's here. Promise. Premiums will increase by $2,500. As of this week, the average increase has been $3,000, just under $3,000. That wasn't true. So you can say we have mandatory insurance now. Everybody has to have it. But if they can't afford it, they don't have it. That's why when we talk about CBO, remember CBO said that 24 million more people would have coverage? It ended up that it was less than 11 million people that actually took the coverage. 19 million people, as of today, have chosen to take the penalty as opposed to buying insurance under the Affordable Care Act. The promise was made, if you liked your doctor, you could keep him or her. That wasn't true. That wasn't true in my own family. Or the number of my staff people who all have to be in a line. We said, if you liked your insurance policy, your insurance company, you could keep it. That isn't true. Blue Cross Blue Shield just announced yesterday they're pulling out of Missouri and Kansas. They're losing $1 million on their insurance policies in those states. They can't afford that. That leaves Missouri, for instance, including St. Louis, with one insurance provider. That's not competition. That's not a choice. Cost of health care will go down. As of 3 days ago, when the Health and Human Services came out with a report, the average cost of health insurance since 2013 has gone up 105%. That's over double of what it was. In Michigan, it's gone up 90%. Wisconsin, 93%. Alabama, 223%. The best thing we can do is repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act.
With what?
No.
With the American Health Care Act. It gives choice, more competition. Even CBO said it reduces taxes by almost $1 trillion. It reduces the deficit by $119 billion, and it reduces spending by $1.1 billion. Now that's significant. Plus, it gives you the choice back of the insurance that you buy. And it continues things like pre-existing condition coverage, coverage for children on parents' policies up to age 26, but expands other opportunities for association health plans, gives more opportunity for those that come under business paid plans to have better coverage at reduced cost. Okay, let me answer that. I generally won't go, I'm going to try to keep with the plan, but I'll answer it. I should have answered that. I meant to. CBO said 24 million people with the original CBO said would not have insurance. Now, since we put the amendments on, 6 pages of amendments on the 124-page bill, so now it's 129-page bill. It says there'll only be 23 million people that want health insurance. Well, stop and think about it. If you have an insurance policy out there, the government puts in place with the reforms that says you aren't required to buy it. We're not going to mandate that you buy it, but we're going to reduce the cost. The average cost of now of insurance under ACHA that CBO put out, the average cost reduction, not increase, but reduction will be 4 to 30%, depending on what state you live in. So at the very worst case scenario, you'll be paying 4% less than what the Affordable Care Act. You can't have it both ways. If you like to tout 23 million people not being able to have insurance. But again, that's based upon the fact that now those people that were mandated to have the coverage, many of them were young, healthy people who decided to take the penalty under the Affordable Care Act and not buy it until they needed it. They no longer are pushed at it. But if now we have more choice, we have reduced premiums, those people have choices now that will say, yeah, it's worth it to me now. If I've got a 30% reduction on what it would have cost me under Obamacare versus what it costs under AHCA, yeah, I'll buy it. I'm a young person. I'll buy a catastrophic coverage. That's all I need. I'm healthy. I'm not married. I don't have a family. Why should I be forced to buy insurance like the Affordable Care Act to require me to have contraceptive and maternity coverage? I'm not even married. So, bottom line is, that's the reason why this would be better than mine.
Terry from Coldwater asks, your thoughts on net neutrality. Was my privacy worth the $36K campaign contribution? Was my privacy worth the $36,000 campaign contribution?
I don't even know what you're talking about there. The bottom line is, we have an internet that has provided all sorts of resources for us and enhanced living opportunities, educational opportunities, business opportunities, because government hasn't had anything but a soft thumbprint on it. We have all of the capabilities now where I can go, I very seldom even use my laptop anymore. This is what I do. And I say to Siri, here's my question. And Siri, whoever she is, tells me the answer to it, generally gets it right. That came without Al Gore or the federal government having strenuous oversight other than a basic level playing field with the internet. So net neutrality is a nomenclature that doesn't speak of neutrality. It says government will choose the winners and losers. I don't like that. And that didn't come from campaign contributions. It came from common sense and the ability to use the internet as I want to and understand that some of the things I read on the internet are absolutely false. But it's my responsibility to find out what's false and what isn't. And so, no, China has net neutrality. I've been there in China, and I've left my cell phone, along with all the rest of my colleagues on the Congressional delegation trip, we've left them on the plane. Because what China does with the capabilities of getting into our critical information or personal information and the ability to control what is on the internet. Anyway, that's my answer.
Josiah from Coldwater asks, what's being done about abortion in our city?
In the state, you'll need to talk to our state legislators, and for years, Michigan has charted the course for the nation on the best strategy and means by which to control abortion in the state, and to show alternatives, to give people a better opportunity to make better decisions as opposed to taking the lives of human beings. Michigan is probably, arguably, the #1 most pro-life state in the union. I'm proud of that. And I appreciate our legislators looking for all sorts of ways until the federal government gets its head straight. And I'm hoping that the Supreme Court nominee that was confirmed and is now on the bench will assist us in ultimately overturning that heinous Supreme Court decision, Roe v. Wade,
Oh my gosh.
that made illegal the taking of innocent human lives to the tune of over 60 million lives that were snuffed out without a choice of their own.
That's right.
Without a choice. So Ken, Mr. Representative, thank you. Keep it up.
Tom from Coldwater asks, has Congress considered passing legislation similar to the British Espionage Act, where the recipient of classified information can be held liable? This could stop leaks to the press.
I think there has to be a means by which we get at the leaks, including from some of my colleagues. The most frustrating experiences I experienced, even from the partisan caucus level, is that in a caucus meeting of our Republicans, many of us don't get up and speak much during the open mic time because we know that almost before we're finished speaking, it will be out to the media. And that's happening from inside our room. So when we're talking about classified information and top secret information, where we go into SCIFs, secure sites, and we have a briefing, that we can't take our cell phones in or anything like that, we can't take any papers out with notes on it. Yet, almost invariably, including a couple of weeks ago when we met with the individual who established the special counsel and heard directly from him the wherefore and why he did it. Some of that information was out to the media almost before I got back to the office. I think we have to find a means by which there can certainly be prosecution of people who leak it. But in the civil liberties of our country, and that's the uniqueness of America, we're a nation under laws and under Constitution. And one of the key aspects of America that isn't key in most other countries is that there is still that creative tension, that danger, that no one can completely stop information from getting out. Now, if a news media person receives that information, and it can be shown that that news media person was involved in getting the information and asking that to be sent to them, knowing full well that it would be classified information. Now, that's another story. But if they just receive it through, quote, no fault of their own, then I guess I got to stand in favor of freedom of press to receive that information. But hopefully in our J schools, our journalism schools, and my oldest son is a journalist. Pulitzer nominated journalist, so I'm pretty proud of the guy. But I hope they also teach ethics. Ethics that says America first. Integrity first and foremost. Use your resources and your information wisely. Understand it can have impact, including impact on individual human lives.
David from Coldwater asks, or states, my concern is the current tone of our civil and political discourse. I believe it is the responsibility of our elected officials to set the example. What are you doing as my representative to reach all perspectives and form bipartisan solutions to our most pressing problems? Example, healthcare, budget, etc.
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't mind people fully engaged. I don't mind passion. Even sometimes I don't mind some boisterous things that go on. I mean, that's part of America. And in Congress, sadly, very little is reported upon the fact that the majority of our times together are very bipartisan. I have wonderful friends that will probably be lifelong friends who are Democrats. One who's a liberal Democrat, well, he's a proud socialist. Jim McDermott, just retired this year. He was my locker mate in the gym. I saw him every morning. He saw me. He was as liberal as I was conservative. He graduated from Wheaton College. I graduated from Wheaton College grad school. So we had that in common. We were as different as two sides of a sheet of paper. He's retired after 36 years or so in Congress, gone back to Seattle, where he says the air is free and he can breathe it easily, with all sorts of his liberal socialist philosophy. And he's invited me to stop at any time I'm out there, and I'll do that. But that goes on. That doesn't make news. Debbie Dingell and I have authored several bills together, dealing with human trafficking and veterans issues, and working on Great Lakes issues together. Dan Kilby and I have worked together on several education bills. They co-sponsored my legislation, and I have co-sponsored some of theirs. Where we can agree, we agree. Debbie and I are working on one now called Jesse's Law, dealing with opioid heroin abuse. And I'm a sponsor, of course, on it. And she's my original prime co-sponsor. And so we continue to do those things. That doesn't make news. We go out to dinner, Democrats and Republicans together. We may fight like cats and dogs on the floor. These are ideas. These are important ideas. Our government was made to be that way. It really was. It wasn't made to be sweet, innocent, and calm. It was made to be messy. It was made to be very difficult, especially at the federal level, to get anything done. Why? Because the federal government received its authority from the states, not the other way around. And originally, the federal government was only given a few things they were responsible to handle. Number one being defense. We've taken so much control, and that's, I think, caused a lot of uncertainty and frustration back in our states and our local communities, and rightly so. A wonderful friend of mine from the legislature, I served with him for 16 years in the State House, Lynn John Hill, a state rep from East Lansing. He was a liberal, I was conservative. He is still liberal, and I'm still conservative. But he was also a minister before he went to the dark side of politics, as I was a minister before I went to the dark side of politics. And so we were put together on the chicken circuit as after-dinner speakers because of the uniqueness of two ministers serving in the legislature together, one Democrat, one Republican, and became friends. But he was given the opportunity to give a speech for our class of first-term limited legislators in Michigan's history. Never forget his speech. I still have a copy of it in my files. And some of you have heard me quote from it before, but I'm going to do it again. His speech was entitled The Beauty of the Messiness of Democracy. And in that speech, he challenged us as soon-to-be former members of the state legislature to go out and he said, ladies and gentlemen, go forth and declare the beauty of the messiness of democracy. Because in its messiness is freedom. He pointed out that it would be far less messy if we just had one-size-fits-all and really a dictatorial form of government. Whether it was a benevolent dictator or non-benevolent. It wouldn't be messy. You don't have a choice. There's no debate. But with our Republican form of democracy, constitutional democracy, we had debate. And that's why we had a long debate even within our own party on the American Health Care Act. And why after 28 hours of debate with Democrats in committee, in which I sat,
Brent from Quincy asks you to address your stand on bringing back jobs in dirty power such as coal mining.
That's a pretty leading statement. Yeah. I don't know how many of you have gone down 2,000, 3,000 feet of coal mines and seen the coal mine workers there. That this is their life. This has been their family's life. This is what makes up communities. This is a service they see as an important function of making sure that manufacturing interests go on, that we turn our light switches on, we use our computers. They see that truly, not as a dirty industry, but as a necessary industry. I've been out in surface mining operations, for instance, out in North Dakota, near Bismarck, where there, as it sits right now, almost 800 years at present usage of clean coal, low sulfur coal. That's very useful in our clean coal technology. And in fact, is being burned right now in the DTE coal-fired plant on Lake Erie. And it wouldn't operate without that coal. When I got out of high school and paying for college, I worked at U.S. Steel Southworks, #2 electric furnace division. When I heard those strobes turn on, those electrodes, to start the heat in the furnace, it shook the entire plant and all the ground around it. That's big power. I'm not opposed to solar, wind, any alternative energy that we have. I'm not opposed to it. But I am opposed to restricting usage of power sources that will enable us to have what's needed for that particular issue. And you'll never start one of those electric furnace plants with wind or solar. You never will. You're going to have natural gas, or coal, or something else we may find in 800 years when we finish mining out that mine in North Dakota. So I think it's an all-of-above energy plan that we need. And I want to make sure that if we still need coal, that we have coal miners and their families able to make a living and carry on their life and their communities' lives without government, political intervention, without even good science behind it at times, just simply regulating them out of existence. And that's where I stand.
Ken from Coldwater. With the CBO not able to make correct predictions, i.e. Obamacare, will we not want to hear from them after the final post-Obama legislation is brought forth?
Yeah, I'd love to hear them now do a post-mortem on their prognostications for the Affordable Care Act. We're wrong. But I don't hold that against them. It's time for Congress to come together in a bipartisan way to change the methods by which we allow CBO to operate. One, they can't dynamically score. That is to say, looking at what it is now and projecting what it will be in the future based upon what earning capabilities are there, what money does, what monetary policy does, what incentives do. They can't look at that. So I don't default them. I just say the reality, they are incapable of dealing with an issue like this and having any type of accuracy. So we'll see. We're basing it upon the fact that the American Health Care Act and accepting what they say that will reduce our premiums by 4 to 30%, depending on what state you're in. But the cost savings will be huge. Tax savings, expenditure savings, deficit spending. In fact, it was more than what we originally thought they would save on those areas. And we'll see what goes forward, and then they'll have a chance, hopefully, to do a postpartum on what we've done with the American Health Care Act, too, if the President ever has the opportunity to sign it. We do know, though, that even with its warts, the only better system of actually controlling the cost, and that's the problem with health care. It's not quality health care we can get in this country. We can get right in the middle of his brain, back about 3 inches in. Hopefully did no damage to his brain. I don't think they did. And brought that out. Quality is unbelievable that we have here, but the cost is the problem. The only better way is getting back to an actual cash pay where I can negotiate with my healthcare provider. I experienced that in Uganda a few weeks back. We were having a dentist put back a crown that I pulled out, doing what I should do, flossing. I thought, oh boy, here I am in Kampala, Uganda. What's this going to mean? I can't live with this crown off. My daughter's a dental hygienist, and she said, Dad, I'll call this dentist. He's a good dentist here in Kampala. Got me in. Within 5 minutes of getting to the dental office. In 20 minutes, he had it all polished up, glued back on, same type of chair set up I would have had in the United States. Got back out to the reception desk, waited for my pay slip there, looked at it, $38. In cash. That's the only thing he would take from anybody. Now that's difficult for Ugandans because there's a lot of poverty in Uganda. In America, we have a different story. And while there's a social safety net still needed for those who truly couldn't pay, if we could get back to that, it'd be great. That's going to take a long time. So in the meantime, let's get back to competition at the very least for our health care. And we'll see what happens.
Jim from Coldwater. Should the House of Representatives refuse to seat the newly elected Montana candidate for Congress after he's guilty of assaulting a reporter?
No. Why? Why, you ask me? The people of Montana decided. I don't have any say over it. Now, if he had a criminal offense that he was adjudicated as criminal, he could not take a seat. That's by rules of the House. He couldn't take a seat. But he didn't have a criminal offense. $250 fine. I think probably Montana's cowboys, etc., didn't see that anything but a badge of courage. I promise you, I'm not going to body slam a reporter.
It's assault.
I wrestled in high school and college. I have 4 rotator cuff bicep surgeries. I can't do that. There are times when I'm trying to get to a meeting, coming from a meeting where the crush reporters with live mics, and they don't care what they pick up. They're just looking for something to pick up. And cameras in our faces and blocking us from even getting on elevators. At times I've had to simply put my cell phone in my ears if I'm on a call so they can't ask me a question and literally narrow my way through so I get to my next meeting. So it does get frustrating, but I won't body slam. And Montana's decided that was okay. We put Anthony Weiner back in office several times. I didn't understand that. I'm glad his locker is no longer 4 lockers down from me in the gym. But they made that decision, and Montana did as well. So no, he's going to receive it. And I'm delighted. I'm a Republican in that seat.
Cynthia from Manchester asks, or states, your description of net neutrality required a response from the audience. Why did I listen to a comparison to China instead of a discussion of what net neutrality means to your constituents?
I gave you that answer. Most of you heard that, didn't you? Yeah. Net neutrality is not net neutrality. It's government establishing what will be and what will not be. That isn't net neutrality. And government never, when they get beyond just a simple law saying this is the law of the land, they never keep it neutral. There's always a leg up for one side. Now, you wanted my answer. I gave you my answer. I may not agree with you, and you may not agree with me, but that's the answer. That's it.
Bill from Coldwater, what can we do about eliminating sanctuary cities/areas in Michigan and across the nation?
Well, I think we ought to force the laws. I was asked a question last night about what is the actual outcome since the election of this president on the incursion of illegal aliens in our country. Right now, 61% less coming to this country than before. And the question was that why? It's simply they know that the laws we have presently in place are going to be followed out. And sure, occasionally we hear the worst case so-called scenario, a very sensitive, compassionate issue of a lady and kids being thrown out. But generally speaking, that's not the case. Media doesn't talk about that 61% or the 60%. But that's what's happened. Simply, they're starting to understand we are going to use the law as it was intended. No muss, no fuss, no big fanfare. Just doing the job. We've also passed in our recent spending plan, bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans supported. The President signed it. An increased allotment for boots on the ground of our federal immigration control agencies, and dollars to be expended in researching the best tools by which we can control our borders and make them legal. That doesn't simply include a fence or a wall. Whatever works best, drones, electronic surveillance, cyber, fence, wall, whatever. And so I think that is said to countries that have really pushed their people to make these decisions. And many of those people, good people, who are sick and tired of the way their governments are treating them, have come to America. But you got to come legally. My dad came legally. And he benefited this country, I can tell you that. His parents and grandparents benefited this country. And if you go to Chicago and drive down Michigan Avenue and you see Wrigley Building, my family was involved in building it.
Kim from Coldwater. Survivors of sexual assault need access to a range of services in both the immediate needs related to victimization. How is this administration going to address this in pre-existing conditions, areas, whether in physical or mental health areas, as you continue to try to repeal ACA?
First of all, the AHCA does not make rape or anything other like that a pre-existing condition. It doesn't change how we treat. It is really a point that ticks me off. That there are voices out there that are trying to promote fear through misinformation or direct lies. We are putting through legislation right now. In fact, this past week, 13 separate bills were passed dealing with human trafficking and sex exploitation. And one of the key things we're attempting to do is make sure these people are treated as victims, not as criminals. Even those young ladies and boys, sadly, as well, that are pushed into prostitution. They aren't criminals. They are victims. And that's our push. And our repeal of the Affordable Care Act will give them more opportunity to have care. Because the Affordable Care Act is not affordable, and it's not caring for people, and it's throwing people off because they can't afford it. And so you can understand, I hope, my angst about people purveying lies. Even the Washington Post has called those statements lies because they've given them, at first, 3 Pinocchios. The Post is not the Republican side of the paper in Washington. It's the Democrat side. They gave 4 Pinocchios on those statements. So I hope, at least in Coldwater and Branch County, that ends it here.
Brent from Quincy, please address your stand on climate warming.
Right now, I take a little more climate warming. I'm tired of the cold spring so far. In Washington, I'll take global cooling because of the humidity and the heat in Washington D.C. I believe there's climate change. I believe there's been climate change since the beginning of time. I think there are cycles. Do I think that man has some impact? Yeah, of course. Can man change the entire universe? No. Why do I believe that? Well, as a Christian, I believe that there is a creator of God who's much bigger than us. And I'm confident that if there's a real problem, he can take care of it. Now that's why I don't expect you to agree with me on that. No, that wasn't the question. Now, I majored in forestry and land management. So I'm not taking any backseat to anybody on stewardship of God's created resources. Not at all. That's why I proudly stand for Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. That's why I was given Conservation of the Year by a major waterfowl group. That's why I'm a member of organizations like Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever. That's why I stand in a freestone stream with my fly rod, going for the wily trout, wanting to see clear water. It may be tan and brown because of nature. No, we ought to be good stewards. He gave us a treasure. We ought to be good stewards of our lives as well. We got to treat the same to be life with good stewardship. All of that. But unnecessarily diminishing our lives, taking economic opportunity away from people who are longing for economic development. Not only those from outside of our country, but those inside of our country who long today, again, finally, to have a middle class. We need a middle class. My dad, mom, middle class, struggled up from losing everything as adults into depression. And because of America, enabled themselves to do that. The machinist tool that I made. As a school teacher turned school bus driver so she could stay home with the kids. Choices that they all had. I want to conserve. I'll be out in Glacier National Park performing a wedding for one of my staffers. My favorite place on earth. Of any place I've been, Glacier National Park. That's where I wanted to be a forest ranger had I gone on in forestry. I'll be taking a Harley Ultra Limited over the Beartooth Pass after that. That's on a bucket list. I've gone over in car many times. There's up toward the top of the Beartooth Pass, and then you've been there. It's quite a ride. Down below, almost at the top, there's this big pond or small lake. Last time I was there, as I stepped out with my kids, complaining about me wanting to take another picture of the mountains with the family standing in front of the pond. I saw, I believe, large fish shapes in that stream, or that body of water. So I planned to have my fly rod with me and park the Harley, and Sue can sit out on the top and read her book, and I'm going to walk down and see if I can catch a fish down there, release it again, because I'm going back to the Harley. But, no, I love nature. I love camping. But I also love the fact that in America, we can succeed for ourselves, but also for the rest of the world, and be good for all of us combined.
Lori from Coldwater. Why can't we get Trump's taxes? We all as citizens should know about our president's finances. Why does he get to say no just because he's the president?
We'll keep asking. There's no requirement by law that he release it. We know that he released at least one year. I think $138 million. Keep asking. There's no law that can require him to do it.
We keep getting no.
And he keep getting no. He has the right to do that. He has the right to do that.
No transparency.
Linda from Quincy. How will federal government handle schools that discriminate when it comes to giving funds for vouchers?
We did it, it's true.
Read the question again.
How will federal government handle schools that discriminate when it comes to giving funds for vouchers?
Well, first of all, we don't have vouchers. If we did, the law would have to be a voucher system that says it's blind. It's given out, as it's given out, to anyone who meets the basic qualifications for a voucher. It'll make a difference whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent, whether you're male or female, whether you come from a city or a rural community. Again, we don't have a voucher system. And so anything that's being conjectured right now is conjecture. And generally it's being conjectured on the basis that we don't don't want vouchers. We don't want full choice. I was raised and trained in public education institutions my first 13 years of my life, including university. My mother was a public school teacher. 4 of my aunts were public school teachers. My daughter-in-law was a public school teacher until the twins were born. I'm not opposed to public education. It ought to be as quality as possible. And where it's failing, we ought to do what's necessary to stop the failure. And I'm glad to see some of the things that are happening in inner cities like Detroit. And I'm glad to see that in the state, the entire state legislature, from all the states working on that. And the governor is working on this. And the mayor is working on it. I'm glad to see that. But Article 8, Section 1 of the Michigan Constitution says, religion, morality, knowledge, being necessary for good government and the happiness of mankind. Schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Check it out if you want. Article 8, Section 1 of the Michigan Constitution. It doesn't say public. It doesn't say private. It doesn't say home. It doesn't say parochial. It doesn't say alternative. It says schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. That's the responsibility of our state legislature to do what's necessary to make sure that schools and the means of education are encouraged. The federal government and our U.S. Constitution, I could read it all to you in a relatively short period of time. It's not a big document. But you're not going to find one word, let alone sentence, dealing with federal responsibility for education. Isn't that true? Why? Because the federalists, when they put the Constitution together, and everyone since then, has determined that better decisions for education are made at the local and at worst the state level. And since we have a constitutional requirement in the state constitution, yeah, you have a state board of education. But it ought to be given more interest in what do the locals say is best. Here you've got a career center in Branch County that has received all sorts of awards for the quality education they're given for careers and trades in the real world. You have local public schools, I know, in Branch County that have received awards on the state level for their educational outcomes. I think between the parents, school board members, faculty members, and administration, here in Branch County, you probably make as good, if not better, decisions than farther up the ladder. And that's all I care about. That kids are educated, whatever institution is available to them. And let's make sure that we have opportunity to evaluate that and have good records, but that decisions be made at the local level, including the parents.
Diane asks, why is it all over the news that pre-existing illnesses will not be covered?
Because people simply want to stop this Congress, this president, from doing what's necessary to change the Affordable Care Act. They know it's melting down. The president signed 10 bills to reform the Affordable Care Act or repeal portions of it during his tenure. So he even knew it wasn't working as planned. Health and Human Services just came out with a report 2 days ago. Did I mention this before? The average cost increase, not decrease, average cost increase since 2013 to the present for premiums for Obamacare policies is almost $3,000. Increase. Out-of-pocket expenses, your deductibles, your out-of-pocket expenses, right now on average is $7,000 to $10,000. That's not insurance. I know farmers here in Quincy, young farmers, who basically say, I've got the insurance policy, I was required to have it, but I can't use it. I don't have that first $10,000 out-of-pocket expense, and until I get to that $10,000, I can't even use the insurance policy. That's what they're saying. 105% average increase across the United States since 2013. 105%, that's over double. 90% in Michigan alone. I guess we should feel lucky we're not at the average. That's not insurance.
Terry, I apologize, I can't read all of this, but asks, will you vote to raise the debt ceiling? Why did you vote against it at a cost of $17 million?
It didn't cost us $17 million. There's no debt ceiling was ultimately raised. We're looking at that right now. I think we are willing to countenance a debt ceiling hike in order to make sure, and I think our Constitution requires us, that all of our debts and obligations are non-debatable. That's to say, we need to pay our debts. But I think there has to be a caveat before that. A good faith commitment that we will pass a balanced budget. If we're not willing to pass a balanced budget, I'm not raising the debt ceiling. All of you have had the opportunity with your kids, and maybe even advice to your kids about grandkids at times. But sometimes it comes to tough love, or else they don't get it. Frankly, we just keep on spending and raising debt ceilings without making a commitment to do the right thing. The moral thing, it is immoral to put $60,000 debt on our children that are sitting in classrooms today and have never asked for that. Don't even know about it. Don't care about it right now. Someday, they're going to have to pay it off. Just like the debt that we put in Social Security and Medicare by allowing fraud and waste and abuse. And oh, by the way, Congress to use it as a bank account for profligate spending. That's immoral. We're talking about morality, not just policy. I think we better get back on it. And those of us who are older, I'll never die as a young man anymore. Don't worry about that. Have a responsibility for what we pass on. My mom and dad passed on something great to me.
Rich, this is the last one. Richard from Coldwater. Is there any thought in Congress about reducing the size of government, such as eliminating the education department and letting the states handle the education issues?
I'd love to, and you can quote me because it's been quoted about me for years and years anyway, so it's no big deal. I'd love to end the Department of Education. And I've told Betsy DeVos that. She knows it. I think she'd like to do it too. I don't quote her because I said that, but I think she would. But she also knows that if Bill Bennett didn't do it, and I hold that against him, when Reagan appointed him Secretary of Education, and he just simply, quote, made it better after only 6 years of being in existence. Remember, it wasn't until Jimmy Carter that we had the Department of Education. That's not that long ago. That's still modern history. Jimmy is still with us. I saw him just a couple, 3 months ago, at the inauguration, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. We made it very well without a U.S. Department of Education. We led the world in all of the areas: technology, industrialization, agriculture, communications, before we had the U.S. Department of Education. I'd love to see that going. Department of Commerce. I'd love to see that going as well. That's states' responsibilities. There's where the competition takes place. So there are a number of things I'd love to see. But what's possible? I don't think Betsy DeVos can end the U.S. Department of Education. I think it's going to be there, so how can we control it? Keep it out of our lives as much as possible. Make them a collector of information. But those people don't know what goes on in Coldwater. They can't. No matter how well-meaning they are, they can't know what goes best in the Coldwater school system. And if you disagree with me on that, we'll agree to disagree. But I bet your school board knows as much about Coldwater as a bureaucrat. Any more?
I think that's all we have time for. Congressman, today. Thank you all for attending. Any closing remarks?
Well,
How about the open floor?
I have the privilege of going directly from here to give a tribute congressional record statement to Connie Winter, the widow of distinguished Sheriff Posse member here who died last year. It was honored in D.C. A couple of weeks ago with commemoration of medal. And so I need to go over that.
Sir, I have a question.
But I want to say to you, I appreciate this. This has been the most level.
I didn't get to ask my question.
I didn't
You
either.
answer the question. Everyone
We don't hear about your fishing.
For your stories.
Bottom line is, I want to thank
You wasted
you
time.
up until now.
Will you vote to impeach?
I want to thank you up until now.
Obstruction of
For
justice,
your willingness to listen to answers, give